I guess without further ado here, I'm going to introduce our host here. Our presentation today is Behavior Change Without Breaking a Sweat. And as most of you know, Al Lewis. Al is one of the foremost authorities in wellness and population health, and he's going to be leading our discussion today. As many of you know, Al's actually written a book specifically about wellness outcomes analysis, which has all sorts of corporate wellness program case studies with outcomes analysis and whether the outcomes were valid or not. In addition to that, Al wrote a book back in 2013 with Tom Emmerich, and Tom managed benefits at Walmart for more than a decade. And as most of you know, Walmart's been very much on the forefront of innovations in employee healthcare. And back then they were talking about centers of excellence, better pharmacy benefit management, better medical management. Many of these concepts are now going mainstream in next generation benefit programs. So without further ado, here's Al Lewis.
Thanks very much, Mark. And we are, I don't know why my thing is making these noises here. Oh, there we go.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, I am going to do a little bit of our dog and pony show, so to speak. As Mark said, we're going to have some questions along the way. And once we get done with some questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark. Mark runs the team around here that makes the trains run on time, and he'll show you how easy it is to implement some of what we're talking about here. By way of background, health literacy is probably the most overlooked thing that in all of healthcare right now. The experts, meaning the CDC, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the New England Journal of Medicine, put huge emphasis on it, and yet at the corporate level, very little of it is done. I think the reason for that is that that there's no other vendors basically besides us. And it's a right brain business. It's a creative business, not a data business. So there's not a lot of people who can do it. It's a right brain business, meaning you've got to know how to write some questions. You've got to know how to teach this stuff. You can't just send people to HealthWise or Wikipedia or whatever. I myself actually wrote a best-selling trivia game many years ago, and used to host a trivia show on two different ones in two different network affiliates in Boston. And like every other trivia buff who seriously needs a life, I was on Jeopardy once. And people say, well, that's cool. Did you win? And I always say, well, let me repeat. I was on Jeopardy once. The way Quizzify works is people take, and there's some variations on this, but typically there are 12 quizzes a year, 10 questions a quiz. Employees take the quizzes, they gain the knowledge about the health and the health benefits, and then they make healthier decisions. And one of the things that we always come back to is that wiser employees make healthier decisions, and healthier decisions save money. We can check the legitimacy box and then some very easily. We're featured in Marty McCary's best-selling book, and most of the organizations in his book did not want to be in it. He gave us a nice shout out. Leapfrog Group, they don't endorse, but I think if you were to call them up and say, who's your favorite vendor? I'm confident who they would answer. We've got some companies that you would have heard of, certainly cities and states you would have heard of. We're validated by the Validation Institute, and we carry the Harvard Medical School seal on our questions. There's thousands of vendors out there. See if you can find one other that carries that seal. Now, people often ask us, how do you fit in with wellness? And the answer is, we can be a substitute or a complement. There is a very, very bright line distinction between us and wellness, and it's neither necessarily good nor bad, but it's a distinction. Conventional wellness is 5% knowing what to do and 95% doing it. So it's tough. It's tough. You need coaching. You need large incentives. You're trying to get people to change habits, maybe eat things that they don't want to eat. And you got to do a lot of monitoring. And ultimately, eventually, it may pay off. Now, with Quizzify, it's not, everybody does it. In regular wellness, 5% is knowing that you have to say, lose weight, stop smoking. The other 95% is actually trying to do it. Quizzify is precisely the opposite. 95% is knowing what to do, and only 5% is doing it. And we'll show you an example from Quizzify. See? Easy, fast, effective, and affordable. But you have to know what to do. And that's why we say it's employee behavior change without breaking a sweat. Now, there are a couple of types we're going to talk about. One is behavior change that will extend your conventional wellness efforts. And the other is behavior changes that will save you money right now. And we'll show you the actual ROIs for each one of those. And today, as Mark mentioned, you're going to be able to play a few of our fun educational questions about behavior change. Now, we have about 1,700 unique questions, starting with things that really get to how you navigate the medical marketplace, how you avoid potentially harmful overuse, even something as simple as taking pills. You know, if the pill says take with food, well, how much food? You know, a lot of people don't know. If you have questions about benefits, if you have benefits that employees don't know about, we've got all sorts of questions about all sorts of benefits, and we're going to show you a couple of examples from ERs versus urgent care, which is a classic, and surprise bills, which are not going away. And then we have a ton of questions about lifestyle. We'll be showing you some of those first. We cover every aspect of lifestyle. Now, the way we complement / substitute wellness is that wellness teaches employees that they need to exercise and that added sugar is bad, and for instance, to eat a healthy breakfast. Now, we're teaching employees everything else. And so we can reach people that wellness folks, I mean, it doesn't do any good for somebody already healthy to collect an incentive to find out they're already healthy. But healthy people have issues too that they might not know about. So for instance, if you have a sports injury, many, if not most people will put ice on it and take Advil. And what we teach is that both ice and Advil actually slow down your healing. Now, this is not to say you shouldn't take them, but you should certainly be aware you're not doing yourself many favors if you want to get back into action quick. So going back to actually, we already have a question coming in here. How do you help healthy people? Essentially, everybody has some kind of health issue. For instance, I'm a healthy guy. Here I am going, but I almost died, and I would have died possibly if it hadn't been for Quizzify, because I had a dental abscess. And because of Quizzify has this one of the dental questions is, what's the only dental problem that can kill you in a week? And the answer is an abscess. I knew I had it, and my dentist kept insisting I didn't for reasons that aren't worth going into, but send you the link. So I basically said I was going to go camp out in the endodontist's office until she fixed this thing. And when she did fix it, I asked her, you know, just out of curiosity, how long would it have been before it crashed? She said, oh, you would have been in the emergency room tomorrow. And yet I'm healthy. So let's go back to the Eat a Healthy Breakfast. Here's what the HRA advises. This is from a very popular HRA. It asks, over the past month, how often did you eat a healthy breakfast every day? Well, is this a healthy breakfast? I mean, it looks healthy. You got your fiber, you got your heart healthy label, you got your antioxidants, which are some of the most overrated things on earth in terms of supplements. But it turns out that that particular cereal is #1 on the list of unhealthy cereals marketing themselves as healthy cereals. This is not to say it doesn't have some health value, but it's also got 14 grams of sugar that they don't tell you about. One of the things we teach employees is, if it's sweet and packaged, it has sugar. Now, it may not be called sugar. And let's hit the polling feature. For the first polling question is, here are 4 ingredients on a label. One of these is not sugar: malted barley flour, grape juice concentrate, caramel, and dextrin. So the question is, which of those is not sugar? And while you're doing it, I'll tell you a little bit more about this this story. And like I say, I have a blog post, but here's why I might have died. Because the emergency room I would have gone to if my abscess had burst into my bloodstream was on an island. And I guarantee you that they had not seen a tooth abscess in I don't know how long. And they would have been there culturing the bacteria, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Meanwhile, I'm going septic, right? So Mark, do we have answers to this one? Okay, malted barley flour is correct. I'm very impressed. Dextrin is a sugar. Malted barley flour is is not a sugar, but malted barley extract is a sugar. So we've got a pretty health literate audience on our hand here, Mark. Now, for some reason, oh, there we go, malted barley extract. Employees need to know where the sugars are, and they're everywhere. And sometimes there are warning signs about sugar that don't say sugar on them. So if something says no high fructose corn syrup on it, my reaction is, seriously, that's the best you can do? That means they got regular corn syrup or something else like that. And 100% of vitamin C sounds like a good thing, but I will guarantee you that if you go to the packaged beverage aisle, every single packaged beverage that has 100% of vitamin C is full of sugar. Now, let's talk about yogurt. You ever think, oh, yogurt is healthy stuff, right? Well, this is from an HRA, and we would urge you to go through your HRAs very carefully. We can do this for you and look for mistakes. So in this one, which is a very popular one, they have under make healthier choices and dairy products to low-fat and non-fat yogurt. Well, yogurt can be full of sugar. And a good rule of thumb that we teach employees is if you recognize the brand from your childhood, it is in fact full of sugar. So if you look at this Yo plate, it's 6 ounces and it's got 26 grams of sugar in it. That let's have a little yogurt with our sugar, right? I mean, this is worse for you by far than the cereal we showed. And then you're thinking, well, we got to teach employees Greek yogurt. Well, yes, many Greek yogurts are healthy, but a good rule of thumb is that when a product comes on the market, somebody figures out a way to sweeten it and make it more popular. Okay, and this is taking a Greek yogurt and turning into a quote unquote Greek yogurt bar. And if you read the ingredients, there's your carrot.
Oh.
Then we're all done with the sugars, except, oh, there's your maltodextrin. Okay, so we could go on and on. In fact, Mark and I actually had a rather long discussion about how many of these things we should show before the webinar started. And we just wanted to show you a little bit of what we can do to educate employees on not so much healthy, getting them to eat more broccoli, but getting them to be more aware of what's already in their diet. So now we're going to go to behavior changes to extend conventional wellness efforts that are not covered by wellness at all, but actually promote health. And that brings us to our second trivia question of the day. What is the best way to get a tick off? Now, we use these in our summer hazards series, and we use them regionally because some areas of the country do not have ticks. Burn it with a match, wait for it to fall out and make sure the head falls out, smother it with Vaseline, or none of the above. Our summer hazards questions, we call it mosquitoes and sunblock and ticks, oh my, and we got a lot of stuff in it. And we also have questions coming in. So actually, let me take a look at this question while you, can somebody not hear the video? Is everybody hearing the video okay?
There was a short glitch out, but it's back working fine.
Okay, great. Okay, so Mark, why don't we, okay, none of the above. Oh, this is, okay. You know this. Do your employees know this stuff? Yes, the answer is none of the above. The way you get a tick out is there are special tick tweezers. This actually, ironically, is not a tick tweezer they're using. They're also squeezing the tick the wrong way, but they're showing how you put the tick in a jar and hold on to it. There are 90 species of ticks in the US, 15 tick-borne illnesses that are different regionally. So we do these questions different regionally. Make sure that tick labs are a covered benefit. Educate your employees, and we'll get back to that in a second. And use labs. Don't use a national lab for this. Use labs that are close to where the ticks are because, like I say, they all have regional different things. Now, the mnemonic that we teach employees here is you should keep that tick in case you get sick. You should keep that tick in case you get sick. And the way to remember that is it sounds like I like to stop at the duty-free shop. I like to stop at the duty-free shop. You should keep that tick in case you get sick. We got another question coming up here. The most popular over-the-counter drug is heartburn medication. What is true about long-term daily use of these drugs? And they're actually says the most popular, they're second most popular. You should take them on a daily basis for them to continue working. Long-term use can lead to flatulence. Suspected adverse effects include heart attacks, kidney issues, and fractures, or all of the above. And while waiting for that, I'll mention that that we have many questions about different over-the-counter and prescription medicines, many of which are overused. We're one of the most overdosed societies in history, if not the most overdosed. Mark, do we have some answers coming in? Oh my goodness. You know, I think some of you have seen a few of these questions before, but yes, it is suspected long-term effects. If you read the label is actually quite clear about that you should only take these for 2 weeks, and then or depending on what the strength is, 2 to 8 weeks, and then discontinue for 3 to 4 months, because it wreaks havoc on the pH in your stomach. So that is the correct answer. So it's exactly the opposite of this one. And the second one, long-term use can lead to flatulence. You're just going to have to blame the dog, I'm afraid. Heartburn turns out to be the second most easily avoided remedy through our trivia games, in terms of just one of these things where 95% is knowing, 5% is doing. So if you have nighttime heartburn, you simply do this to your bed, raise it, put it on an angle, 6 to 9 inches, and the majority of nighttime heartburn goes away. Speaking of yogurt, yogurts with probiotics in them, actually that's what I ended up doing, make your heartburn go away. I used to be taking these pills all the time, and I didn't know. I mean, I didn't have Quizzify. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be doing that, and I happened to run into a yogurt salesman who told me to try the yogurt, and it worked. The number one, that was number two, the number one all-time easiest productivity improvement for the Zoom era is dry eye. Okay, when you're watching a Zoom, such as this one, you don't realize that you are blinking much less than you ordinarily blink. That causes your eyes to dry out. You may notice it by the end of the day sometimes, or in the evening of eye strain. Some people will just grab some eye drops. That turns out, I don't mean to diss these totally. They're perfectly fine if you're using them a few times a week, but or a couple times a week. But if you're using them every day, you should shell out for these single-use ones, because they don't have preservatives in them. And it's the preservatives that can cause your eyes to dry out even more. So ironically, as is true with many over-the-counter medicines, sometimes the more you use them, the worse your problem gets if you're using them not according specifically to the directions on the label. So we'll show you some behavior changes that actually save money now, and we'll show you the ROI with each one of them. Of the thousands of specific condition categories, which of these is not, and this, by the way, is obviously not a question we'd ask employees, is not in the top 25 of employer-paid hospital expenses? Extreme prematurity, prematurity other than extreme, diabetes, cesarean sections. And while you're looking at that, actually, I don't think we've gotten any new Q&A. Oh, is this a new one? No, it's still the same one. So you can put some Q&A in, because I think we're getting stuff in the chat box too, but I don't want to get to the chat box right this sec. Mark, do we have?
We do. Here we go.
Okay, cesarean sections, diabetes, premature. The answer is diabetes. So this is one where we actually did stump the panel. Okay, diabetes is not a major expense for hospitalizations in the working age population. Now, occasionally we will ask, of 1,000 employees or 1,000 people you cover, how many are going to go to the hospital with diabetes in a given year? And we get answers like, 20, 50, that kind of thing. The answer is 1. So yes, you're doing a lot of work on diabetes, and you've only got 1 hospitalization. Now, what you're thinking is probably, yeah, but a lot of people go in with secondary. Well, that's 8. I have the right number of fingers, yeah, 8. And that 8 includes people who like broke a leg and had diabetes, having a baby and had diabetes. It turns out that of the top 25 total hospital expenditures in the commercially insured population, in other words, your population, and this is the DRGs, and this is the list of the top 25. 8 to 9 of the top 25 are related to birth events. There's a regular one. ECMO here is sometimes done to preemies and sometimes not, so we didn't count that. But then if you look, extreme immaturity, C-section, normal, prematurity, vaginal delivery, neonates with major problems. And yet, so this is where your money goes, but think of where your efforts are going now. So we're going to ask another trivia question. This time you're going to use the chat box. Okay, so just now you're going to hit the chat box for this. The traditional method that pregnant employees or their partners/spouses rely on to predict prematurity yields 17% of cases predicted. So 83% are surprises. And the typical way that you do this is you use history. Did somebody have a history of a preemie, and then they can do an ultrasound and look at cervical something or other. So the question for the chat box is, what percent of singleton pregnancies, not multiple births, that deliver preterm can be predicted with state-of-the-art methods as opposed to the traditional method? And so just put a number that you think is, a number that take a guess, and then Mark, let me know when you see some answers there that are close. I see a lot of answers coming in, so somebody's got to be pretty close. Any guesses? Are you still waiting for a close one? Mark? Oh, you're muted, Mark. Well, for
I
some
think Andre
reason,
Watson with 20% is the closest one, Al.
okay, so the closest one that we had to 17% was 20%, but the answer is up to 92% can be predicted. And we say up to because there are many reasons you won't get all the way there, but you're going to be way, way better than 17%. Now, we don't normally endorse specific vendors, but in this case, there is one vendor that is called Sera Prognostics that has a proprietary tool that's been FDA approved, and it's the only one of its type. You test pregnant moms between week 19 and week 20, and you get this level of prediction. Now, once something like this is predicted, it can be, there is a protocol, but the protocol requires a fair amount of work on the part of the mom, so you don't want to be mispredicting. On the other hand, you certainly do want to predict the ones that do exist. Now, the amount of, besides the impact on your employees of, the stress, and lost work time of premature baby, these things are costing a lot of money. Okay, so this is the top 5 high cost stop loss claims for people who have stop loss. And there are 4 that are higher, and this is number 5, preemies, number 5 out of everything. Now, the other difference between preemies and the top 4 here is the top 4 are all either or. Either you have it or you don't, number 1. And number 2, and preemies, there are going to be some that are going to be higher than the stop loss trim point. But there are going to be plenty of others that are right below it. You're not going to have plenty of others below these things. You either hit it and go way beyond it, or you don't. And the other thing is, of the top 5, this is the only one that's preventable. Now, let's see how much this is worth. Quizzify has an online calculator that you can use to estimate the ROI. I'm going to try it. Now, they say you shouldn't try a recipe on company until you've done it at home. So this is the first time we've done it. Oh, look, it worked. Okay, so you can go to ROI calculator on Quizzify under more. And you can enter a few variables, the name of the company, how many people you cover, et cetera. And that will give you the ROI based on standard inputs that we put in. But you can then go to, say, premature births, and you can vary the inputs. So your birth rate, if you look at, is probably a little bit higher than 1%, but we put 1%. The preemie rate is generally about 10%. You can vary this number, and instead of getting a 92% reduction, we're just saying, let's see if we can get 20%. Well, if you get 20%, you're saving $10,000, not to mention having a whole bunch of happy employees, and this is per 1,000 people, and Quizzify generally only costs about $10,000 or $12,000. So you're essentially breaking even just with this one, just by teaching people about premature birth and how to ask their obstetrician to do this test. You also have to make sure the test is covered, but it's very easy. There's a coverage code for it. The trick is getting employees, educating employees that they should do this. That's where Quizzify comes in. We've got a whole prenatal quiz set. So now let's get into even more wasteful parts of healthcare. And we would, if you look at this graph over here, you can see that unnecessary care is vastly more expensive, more time than, for instance, uncoordinated care. And yet many of people have, care coordination that they spend a lot of money on while not looking into unnecessary care, which is what we do. And we would ask rhetorically, is there any other line item where employees get an unlimited budget and no training in how to spend it? The answer is no. It's only healthcare. We provide that training. We teach employees to avoid overscreening, overdiagnosis, overtreatment, overdosing, and overpaying, which is what creates this big blue bar here. And too much medicine is not just expensive and unnecessary, but it's actually harmful. And we have a saying at Quizzify, just because it's healthcare doesn't mean it's good for you. And here are a whole bunch of books about too much healthcare. And I guarantee you, we did not cherry pick these titles. There are not 4 other books about how Americans don't get enough healthcare. Now, the question is, how often should you do your screening? Well, remember, you're also asking employees to go to the doctor every year. So going to the doctor and getting screened there and then getting screened in the workplace is way too much screening. If you look at what the American Heart Association has to say, they recommend much less than annual for most people in cholesterol and much less than annual for most people in blood glucose. Now, if you're at risk, you should be doing more. And in a little while, we will show you how to distinguish between who should be getting the screening and for whom you're either wasting your time and money, or worse, actually creating problems where none exist. Too much screening leads to too many quote unquote conditions, to use the word that the vendor here uses, being quote unquote discovered, to use the word that the vendor uses, by doing absurd numbers of tests. Now this is way too many tests. This is from Interactive Health, and we're very proud of the fact that we helped drive them out of business because they were harming employees right and left by telling them they had things that they did not have. So this is an extreme example, but too much healthcare leads to too many diagnoses and too much treatment. So I said a second ago we would talk about appropriate levels of care, and that's what we will do now. So this is a tool that Quizzify will give you that helps employees separate themselves into those who want the screening and those for whom the screening is a complete chore and they can't stand it and they're not going to act on it anyway. It says how to earn, we used this last fall, how to earn your 2021 incentive. And it's probably a little bit too small to read, but it says do the screening if you haven't been to the doctor, you're I can't even read it now. You're over 35 or 45 if you're female and been told you have significant risk factors. You've got you may have undiagnosed disease, you're afraid. You're concerned about your weight. You want to know your numbers. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons you would get screened, but many people don't fit those categories, especially younger folks. So for them, we say, why don't you play some Quizzify games? And we have a whole lot of as many games as you want, and people pick some number of them that they would earn their incentive with. Now, the other advantage of this, besides not wasting money on screens you don't need, and not making your employees using up their time and annoying them and whatnot, is that by offering an alternative to screening, you stay out of trouble with the EEOC. Those of you who are on our EEOC webinar 2 or 3 months ago know that they've gotten rid of all the protections for employers, and you can very easily get, you probably won't get sued in court, but you could certainly easily have an administrative action against you by the EEOC if you do not offer alternatives to screening. The EEOC, this is probably more than you need to know, but it interprets the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act very specifically says you can't do involuntary clinical exams or clinical inquiries. Well, newsflash, Quizzify is neither. We don't ask for any health information from anybody. That's one of the reasons, as Mark will show you, that we're so easy to implement. This is no for PHI. All right, let's hit the button again. And this time, not the chat box, but the polling feature. How does the radiation in a CAT scan compare to the radiation in X-ray? 100 times as much, 5 to 50, about the same, or the X-ray has more?
Al, there's a question here about how we address vaccine hesitancy.
Oh, okay, that's a great question. And let's answer this one, and then actually I think I can take you to, we have whole quizzes on vaccine hesitancy, but we just added a killer question this morning. So Mark, what's the answer to this one? Okay, more than 100 times as much. So here's the thing. I suspect many of you have seen our dog and pony show before, but this just goes to show you that you only have to see it once to remember the key questions, some of the key factoids. And that's one of the values of Quizzify, is it's very easy to remember. Let me hit the vaccine hesitancy thing if I can. I'm going to go to Chrome, and we have up here, yes, so this is you're going into the belly of the beast here. And we just added this question this morning. I'm going to expand the screen, which is probably a mistake because I won't be able to get back to, we just added this question this morning, which is between January and April of this year, roughly what percentage of hospitalized COVID patients were not fully vaccinated? In fact, actually, why don't you hit your chat box for that? And while you do that, I will tell you a little bit about vaccine hesitancy. We have entire quizzes on vaccine hesitancy, and we're not lecturing at people. We're giving people factoids that allow people to figure out for themselves the value of vaccinations. They're some of our most popular and frankly also least popular quizzes among some folks. Some folks are not going to reach at all. So Mark, do we have anybody who's close?
Yeah, we do. We have a fair amount of people seen this. We have a lot of educated people here, but Eleanor Soffing guessed 100%, which is real close.
Yes, the precise answer, congratulations, Eleanor, is 99.
And Kathy Cather was 99.8, which is even a little closer.
Oh, Kathy. Well, she and I are Facebook friends, so that doesn't count. She gets to listen to me whine about healthcare every day. It's 99.7% of the patients in the hospital in this period were not fully vaccinated. And our questions have learn more links. I'm not going to go to right now just in the interest of time, but this is how quickly we add these questions. We add the questions so quickly that, I mean, we have not had this one reviewed by Harvard yet because they don't turn things around on a day. They're very good partners, but it's an awful lot to ask them to drop what they're doing to answer our trivia needs. But whereas a typical wellness program is updated every couple of years or few years, we can update on a daily basis. So yes, CAT scans are full of radiation, and in particular, you got to watch out for the kids because this is the fastest growing category of CAT scans. Which is with kids, and CAT scans have definitely raised the kids' risk for a future cancer. So don't demand CAT scans for your kids. Now, they'll get plenty on their own. Believe me, the doctors will be recommending plenty, but if you can just not demand inappropriate ones, you're going to be way ahead of the game. So this is, there's an article about Americans being addicted to unnecessary scans. This is MRIs, the US versus the rest of the developed world. We're number 2, Turkey is number 1. And essentially there's no list you've ever seen where Turkey is number 1 where you say, gosh, I wish we could be more like Turkey. Then if you go over to CAT scans, we are number 1, as they say in the recording industry, number 1 with a bullet, way ahead of number 2, Luxembourg, where basically every CAT scan is within walking distance. And all you have to do is just explain to people the risks of these things, and the number will go down. In fact, we actually, and on that number, these statistics, by the way, were 2013, which is the last time they did a cross countries data. But this just came out that research has found that, in fact, the cost of CAT scans and MRIs and the number have been going way up as part of vertical integration between physician groups and hospital systems. They have to hit their numbers. You're paying to buy these practices. They have revenue expectations. It's up to you as the employer not to let them get away with it. So now we're going to use the chat box again, this time for MRIs. A woman with a known back diagnosis who'd actually had surgery to fix it, so they knew exactly what it was, got a spine MRI at 10 different centers. And the question is, and hit the chat box, how many different diagnoses did she receive from those 10 centers? And I can see that the chat box is being flooded again. We've got a good turnout here on this webinar. Mark, just let me know.
We're getting a lot of answers here, Al. None of them are above 15, though. So
49.
Oh, wait a minute. Carolyn Grant came in with 47.
Carolyn Grant, almost 49. Good job. Okay. So it wasn't just that there are 49 different diagnoses, it's that no two centers agreed with each other, and only a few of them actually managed to pick the right diagnosis, even if they had multiple ones. I myself, and Mark would tell you the same thing because it's happened to him too, had an MRI, I think in my case of my spine 20 years ago. Well, if the MRI had been right, I'd be in a wheelchair by now. You know, my vertebrae are being compressed. Well, you know, you get older, your vertebrae get compressed. So let's then go back to the ROI model and see what happens when we take a look at scans. Okay, so we put in a average cost, which is kind of the average between the outpatient and if you get it done in the hospital. This event rate is actually considerably, actually a little bit lower than what's in the slide you just saw. And we ought to be able to get a 20% reduction when we're saying 5. And then MRIs are a little more expensive. They're done less frequently, and we're only looking at 3. Now, we think we should do much better, and a lot of it's going to depend on how much communication you do with the employees about these quizzes. But just scans gives you a $25,000 savings per 1,000 employees, which is going to be at least double, probably at least double what you're paying for Quizzify. So once again, just like you could break even on preemies, you can break even on scans. Okay, so next question, let's turn to dental. What should you do if your kid has a cavity in a baby tooth? Get it filled, even though it will be very traumatic. Ask the dentist to spray magic juice, SDF, on it. Use general anesthesia, or wait for the baby tooth to fall out. And
one of the questions we get sometimes is about, well, you know, are you careful not to tell somebody not to get a CAT scan when they might need it?
That's a very good question. And we never, with the exception of really egregious things like full body scans and that kind of thing, we never tell anybody not to get anything. We let them figure things out for themselves. And in the case of CAT scans, we don't say, think about whether you need it. We say, ask your doctor about the risks. Ask your doctor about the radiation. Ask your doctor if there's some easier way of getting the diagnosis. Ask your doctor if they can look at the scan that you just had 3 months ago, for instance. So, Mark, do we have some answers on this one? Okay, so we have this way. Now I know that. Now I know who's now seen this and who hasn't. 43% of you have seen our Dog and Pony show, and the rest of you haven't, because the answer is, in fact, acid dentist to spray magic juice on it, called SDF. Now you might say, what is SDF? Well, that would be a very good question, because newsflash, your dentist has not told you about this. It turns out that most cavities no longer need to be drilled and filled, and yet they are. Now, if you go to Japan, for instance, where they've been using SDF for 50 years, a dentist would look at you really funny if you went in and said, I have a cavity, you should drill it and fill it. In Japan, more than 90% of cavities are treated with SDF. And if you look at the literature here, Kaiser Health News, I don't know where this one is from, New York Times, the Today Show, and many others talk about this, and yet your dentist doesn't. And here's how it works. You put a drop of this stuff, silver diamine fluoride, on something called a microbrush, and the different ingredients in the silver diamine fluoride have different roles in terms of killing the bacteria, covering the tooth, stopping the growth, and that's basically it. Sometimes you need two treatments. If the cavity is too deep or it's in a hard to reach place, you're still going to have it drilled and filled. Now, the dental profession, as you will find, as you've probably noticed, if you or your child or parent has ever had a cavity, does not mention this. Yet we have so many positive testimonials for SDF, we created a separate category on our reviews page for our SDF testimonials. And we just had, literally yesterday, some of you might know Deb Alt. She was told that she had 3 small cavities. And she wrote to me and said, Al, I remember something from Quizzify about you don't need to get cavities filled anymore. So I sent her all this stuff on Monday. And today she said, yeah, you know, her dentist was actually shocked that she'd even knew to ask about it. Well, why isn't he telling her about it? Why do people have to ask? And yet everybody does. So let's go to the ROI model again and put in the dental and look under, where is it, cavities. Your average cost today is about 150. You've got about, actually it says here 300, it's probably more like 500. It's very difficult to find the actual number. Theoretically, you can reduce them by 2/3, but the dentists fight back. So we'll say 30%. And once again, you pay for all of Quizzify just on that one item that costs $30. That alone pays for more than all of Quizzify. Plus, you have some very happy employees when you teach them this stuff. Stents are another example. Quizzify teaches that for the most common indication for stents, it turns out there is no difference between doing a stent and not doing a stent after about 6 to 10 months. Back pain, Quizzify does a ton of stuff on back pain. Spinal fusion rates are rising because they are actually starting to be done outpatient, which makes them easier to agree to. You go into a surgeon, he says, yeah, you've got this back issue. We've got an MRI right here, and we can schedule your surgery. You'll be in and out the same day. It makes it sound very easy to agree to. And yet, there are many, many articles about how what we teach in Quizzify, which is accurate, is that 90% of back pain will go away on its own. But everybody thinks they're in the other 10%. So once again, let's go to the ROI model. And we have stents and back pain separately, but I'll just do back pain here, spinal fusion. The average cost, the events per 1,000, and all this is sourced down here. The reduction that we conservatively ought to be able to get. And if we just reduce a small number of these, once again, pay for all of Quizzify. And you don't have to remember this stuff. We have an app. You can just drop this stuff right into your phone, one of 2 ways, either on our app, and you can see we have the questions that you should ask the doctor. We opened it to the back surgery page. We've got a ton of topics. Or you can put it right in your Apple Wallet along with your credit cards. And if you're a health plan, you can actually private label this to yourself if you want. So we have all the questions that you need. And then because some people are embarrassed to kind of ask questions, we have that covered too. P.S. If you're reluctant to ask, blame us. ER versus urgent care. There are still many people going to the ER that don't need to go. They don't understand the difference in the copays, which is huge. And especially when it comes to freestanding emergency rooms. Now, these two buildings look pretty much exactly alike. One of them charges 10 times what the other one will charge. How are your employees supposed to know the difference? P.S. It's the one on the right that charges 10 times. Now, we also have solved the question of surprise bills. When I say solved, I mean solved. We're the only vendor that has figured out how to prevent employees from getting surprise bills for emergency services. Because I myself am an attorney by training, figured out how to take the one law and found the loophole in it that allows employees to go in and say, I want to pay this amount, not this huge amount you're going to charge, and the hospital or the ER has to go along with it. It's a separate topic, but you can see we got featured in the New York Times. You can go on LinkedIn and read about it. And all you need to do is teach your employees to use this little phrase right here instead of signing their wacky financial consent form, and you're protected from surprise bills. Once again, we'll go to the model, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you both the ER and the surprise bills. I'll just show you the surprise bills one. 18% of ER visits and 16% of inpatient stays have surprise bills, according to the sources here. And this is the average upcharge. And if we can even get 20% of employees to remember to use that language, you save almost 5 times what Quizzify costs. By the way, we were kidding before. Just wanted to see if we could catch anybody. The freestanding emergency room is the one on the left. The key thing is that freestanding ERs have to be open 24/7 and they have to say emergency on them. So we dramatically enhanced the reach of wellness with the cavities, the scans, tick bites, the stents, spinal fusions, yada, 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 versus just wellness, which is just looking at that, that one diabetic per 1,000 and maybe one heart attack. Once again, nothing wrong with wellness, but you can dramatically expand the reach. Now with that, I'm going to show you now, we're talking about without breaking a sweat. We're going to close by showing you how the implementation is, how easy it is. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to my colleague who leads the team here that makes the trains run on time, Mark Delacave. Now, Mark's been doing this forever. He's been with us for quite some time. He's really good at what he does. And he's also a big advocate of some of these next generation things that we're talking about. Mark?
Well, thanks, Al.
Do you want me to stop share?
I've got the screen here, and I'm just going to put this into presentation mode. Okay, great. We're going to do a real quick 5,000 5-minute view, a 5,000-foot 5-minute view of our application, so you can get a sense of what employees see, what employer administrators can do in terms of tracking participation, reporting, gauging comprehension, how we can easily curate and manage content, and how we can implement Quizzify. So let's get started. This is a page that employees see when they come into our app. And the great thing about this is that it's very easily customizable. We have our quizzes down here at the bottom, which we might have a vaccine hesitancy quiz. That's been the most popular lately. Above that are some short blurbs on health literacy facts. The top 3 messages can be customized by the employer. We have a standard program message that you can edit if you have a competition or incentive program that can be edited. It's a text editor with spell checking and with different fonts. And you can put an important message at the top that might relate to return to work. Over the right-hand side, an employer administrator can highlight benefits that employees should be using, but they're not really paying attention to, or benefits that you always get questions about. This interface is also available in Spanish and has been vetted to be accessible under the WCAG standards. Now, from an administrator point of view, we also have some really nice tools. You can see who's registered. You can see who's been active recently. Quizify's it shows up to your employees once a month. So we have a lot of people in your organization constantly seeing Quizify. It's a great way to touch them with important things that are relate to your benefits as well as health literacy. We have at Quizify, one thing we're very proud of is we have an excellent quiz completion rate. Once we get somebody into our quiz, they'll spend the 10 minutes and they'll complete all 10 questions. And that's 94% across the board. It's very high in this case. And we also, the power user rate is the people that'll play that same quiz, the percent twice. They'll go in, a lot of these health literacy concepts are new. They'll click on the learn more links. They might go to the resource that you present in the question, or they might go to look at some of the clever answers that Al's come up with. Quizify is all about completing the quizzes. You can't advance until you get it right. And once you finish the quiz, you hit the goal. So the incentive that almost all of our clients use is quiz completions. So you might have an incentive, well, if you do 8 of the 12 Quizifys in a year, you're eligible for a drawing of $300 gift cards. So we can track that in real time. You can export it right into Excel, or we can connect via API to a wellness platform or some other type of platform. We connected to some of the carriers as well. What you can also do on our app is you can ferret out where employees are not comprehending things as quickly as you might like. And here's a question about has to do with COVID vaccines. And what you'll do over time is you'll be able to, and we're going to send this out. This is too much to absorb right now, but over time you'll notice that year over year there will be upticks in comprehension in specific health literacy categories. Now we're just going to quickly take a jump into our application. And I just want to show you what an employer administrator can do with managing content at Quizify. We have 1,700 unique questions. Al has a standard curriculum. We have 50 specialty topic quizzes, like quizzes on diabetes, on sleep, on summer hazards, on heart health. So we'll go through a curriculum when an employer starts with us, but then they're going to see the questions well before they're actually scheduled to go to employees. And what an employer can do is actually go in and modify a question. Here's a question about second opinions. And this question doesn't actually have a link to a second opinion service. So what an administrator can actually just go in and actually type in, www, second MD or whatever your second opinion service might be, put that right in here, click submit. It goes back to Quizify for quality control. And it's done. It's that simple to just, if you don't like the wording, if you don't like how we say something, you can actually just change it on the fly. Or if you don't like a question, you can actually just click replace and you go right into our database. And you can search by module of all the different categories, or you can type in a keyword like urgent care versus ER. If you want an urgent care versus ER question this month, you can just put that right in there. So the takeaway from this is that we really tried to make it very straightforward and simple for an employer administrator to get the right content for your organization ready to go. Now, about implementation, if we have to, we can implement in just a couple days. But we've done all sorts of single sign-ons and integrations with other platforms. So when a new employer joins us, we really try to figure out what's the best way to integrate. And then we have lots of material to help you explain and promote Quizify, so that when it shows up, employees know that there's been a Harvard review on the medical content, that we're not collecting any type of personal health information. We can also put QR codes on posters and break rooms that work very well for shop workers, so they can get to Quizify, and everything is optimized so they can also do it on their phone. And lastly, we'll just talk for a moment about price. This goes back to the slide that Al showed earlier, the video clip about sometimes there's a much simpler solution. In this case, Quizify as a wellness/population health tool is $8 to $12 per employee per year. That'd be for 1,000 and 10,000, and the price scales with numbers. And it also includes a 100% savings guarantee, as Al was going through the ROI calculator. Now, and that compares to these other traditional programs, which can literally be hundreds of thousands of dollars and more per year. So Quizify stacks up as being also very cost effective, as well as being a tool that's guaranteed and in many cases actually works better. So now I'm just going to turn it back to Al to wrap up here.
Okay, so did you learn anything just now? So hit your Mark will put it up. Yes, and our employees would too. No, and neither I nor our employees. And while you're doing that, two things on the chat box. First, somebody actually, we put that up with the ER and the urgent care center, and somebody, I'll give him a shout out. Michael K. Smith said, no, it's the one on the left. So he didn't fall for us for 1 second. And then another question that came in was, can you write your own material? Yes, you certainly can, but you're probably more likely to just give us a particular factoid and we will write the question around it for you. So, did you learn anything just now? Ho-ho! Score! Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And that, in fact, is the key to Quizzify. Actually, Mark, if you go to the next slide. The key to Quizzify is that, the key to Quizzify. This is Quizzify's unique attribute. In a wellness challenge, let's say you give people $100 to take 10,000 extra steps in a week. A lot of people sign up for the program. A lot of people will take the steps, and then they'll get their $100, and at the end of the week, they're going to go back to their ordinary business. Now, you might say, why is the skipper up here? Well, what if you said, we'll give you $100 if you memorize the Gilligan's Island theme song this week? A lot of people take you up on the offer. They'll memorize the theme song. They'll collect the $100 at the end of the week. And guess what? They're never going to forget the theme song. And we just proved that because a lot of people were getting the right answers on those trivia questions we were asking, because maybe within the last 2 or 3 years, they've seen the Quizzify Dog and Pony Show. And some of those questions were from that Dog and Pony Show, and they remembered them after 2 to 3 years. And that, my friends, is Quizzify. And actually, most of you stayed on until the end, which was very flattering for Mark and I. And Mark, I think we're ready to wrap, right? It's right at the hour, unless there are any other questions or anything that came in on the chat box. Oh, wait. I got one, which is, my dentist said it would, why doesn't the manufacturer pitch this stuff directly to the consumer, meaning the silver diamine fluoride? That's a really good question. And the answer is that that particular manufacturer makes many things for dentists that enhance their revenues, and this is the one thing that they make for dentists that subtract from their revenues. So if the dentists were ever to find out that this company called Elevate Oral Care is going around their back telling consumers to demand something that reduces their revenues, Elevate Oral Care, ironically, the manufacturer of this incredible product with an exclusive license in the US, would go out of business. On that cheery note, Mark, anything else? I think we're ready to
There's
wrap.
one other question about minimum size. Right now, we can make this economical for groups of 100 and more, and we're actually going to have almost a self-serve version for smaller groups. So if you're interested at any size, please just reach out to us. And when we have a solution that works, we'll contact you. And we're going to send everybody a recording as well as the slides. And thank you for joining us today. Anything
and we'll
else?
answer all your other questions online in the next day or two.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.